There were no answers. There were no cures. There were only symptoms. I did not know how much more I could take.
All of a sudden, I had what the kids called psycho mom on my hands.
I was afraid it would get physical. She had a habit of throwing things, and I didn't want to be in that path.
You're at a loss. You've done everything that the doctor said, and why is this still happening? Why is this happening to our son?
I got pissed. I'm like, what the heck is going on?
Next, two medical mysteries that defied the experts. Malinda Sargestano has what at first seemed to be ordinary headaches, but they soon escalate into fits of pure insanity. With her family falling apart and her health deteriorating rapidly, Malinda makes a terrifying choice.
I decided I would rather die than live like this.
Then, overnight, 18-month-old Craig Leopard's arms swell to triple their size. While his doctors dismiss the symptoms, his parents frantically search for a way to end their only child's agony.
I have never heard this type of screaming coming out of my son ever.
When illness strikes, we look to doctors to give us answers. But what if they can't? For these unlucky patients, diagnosis is a mystery. In the spring of 1986, Malinda Sargestano was living in Virginia with her husband and two small children. They were still in their early 20s and working hard just to make ends meet. But Malinda felt as if she had it all.
Life was incredible. I was extremely happy with my marriage, with being a mom.
My mom was really involved in our lives. She would take us pretty much anywhere that she went, as long as we were together.
But Malinda's active lifestyle takes a sudden turn when she's struck with what at first seems like an ordinary complaint.
One evening, I put the kids to bed, and I was actually sitting on the couch folding laundry, and I just felt a strange headache. It really caught me off guard.
One headache turns into two, then three, and over the course of the next month, they seem to take on a life of their own.
The pain was sharper, and it got to the point where I knew something wasn't right. I'd never had a headache that was this intense. I literally could not walk. When I would have to go to the bathroom, I would have to crawl because the movement of just walking and standing would intensify the headache. I did not know how much more I could take. I literally wanted to die. It hurt that bad.
Over-the-counter medications do nothing to dull the crippling pain. So Malinda makes an appointment with a family physician.
The first time I went to a doctor for the headaches, they done the routine examination. They checked my pulse, my blood pressure, my temperature. Looked in my ears, looked in my throat and said, "What's the problem? Eat right, exercise, everything will be fine, and quit stressing."
Malinda is blindsided by the doctor's dismissive attitude. But determined to find out what's triggering the agonizing attacks, she sees 3 more doctors over the next month. Each of them, however, assures her that she's simply stressed out. If she would just relax, the headaches would subside.
The only thing I took away was they don't get it. They're not listening. I became extremely frustrated. It got to the point where the doctors weren't going to help. No one understood.
Over the next 12 months, the vicious episodes take an enormous toll on the young mother. And she's devastated by the effect the illness is having on her family.
She used to be a really active person, and then she went to being immobile. When I would come home from school, I would find my mom laying on the sofa with a washcloth over her face, and that was the everyday norm.
I could not function as a person, let alone a mom.
I was 8 years old, and I thought, is my mom gonna die?
With her mother virtually incapacitated, Natasha begins looking after her 5-year-old brother. In fact, the 8-year-old soon takes over the running of the entire household.
From the time I came home, I would clean up the house, and I would make dinner, which was either noodles or sandwiches. I had to take care of everything. I didn't have a choice. We wouldn't eat dinner if I didn't make it.
Dealing with the pain and watching my daughter, I had two things I felt. One was total pride. The other one was guilt. Guilt's hard.
For 2 years, Malinda does what she can to cope with her pain. But then in the summer of 1990, a bizarre new symptom emerges. With the onset of each intolerable headache, her pulse begins to race out of control.
My heartbeat would be very solid. I mean, pound. And then it would increase in rate. You could feel it through your throat, and you could feel it in your eyes. And it felt like with every heartbeat, the whole top of your head was gonna explode.
Malinda does her best to explain the terrifying new symptom to her husband.
He would look at me and go, "This isn't you. Are you losing it?" He wanted to support me, but you can't support when you don't understand yourself.
He begs her to go back to the doctor, but Malinda refuses, convinced that another expert will simply dismiss her symptoms as stress. She's determined to fight the illness alone, even when things go from very bad to much, much worse.
I ended up with this sweating issue, and not just a normal sweat. My hair would be saturated at the roots, and if you wore makeup, what started off on your forehead ends up on your chin.
I remember her coming in asking me, "Are you hot?" And it'd be wintertime. You could just see her perspiring everywhere.
I actually went to the store once and bought like 16 different deodorants, and I would try each one for 3 days. And then I would trash it and go on to the next.
But nothing she does seems to alleviate the excessive amount of perspiration. Even during the winter, she's sweating like crazy, despite the fact that it's 35 degrees and all of the windows in the house are wide open.
And the rest of us bundled up in layers and gloves and being miserable. None of my friends would come and stay the night because they would always say that we had no heat in our house.
When they feel as if they can't take it any longer, the family once again pleads with Malinda to get some help.
I was really worried about my mom. She was really, really sick. I thought if she really wanted to help herself, she would. She would go to the doctor and get to the bottom of it.
So 8 years after the symptoms first began, Malinda finds herself back in a doctor's office looking for answers. But after giving her a thorough exam, he drops a bombshell.
He explained to me, it's a woman thing. It's probably time for estrogen, at which point, I'm 32, 33 years old. It's not time for estrogen. Something's going on.
His diagnosis pushes her over the edge. She leaves his office with few answers and even less hope.
I thought that was about as bad as it was gonna get. Things got a whole lot worse.
For more than 8 years, Malinda Sargestano has struggled with a bizarre set of symptoms: debilitating headaches, rapid heart palpitations, and bouts of excessive sweat.
There were no answers. There were no cures. There were only symptoms. My husband grew extremely tired of watching me being sick. He really couldn't take no more. He didn't get it. He didn't understand the strain in the relationship. It was just too much. And so we finally ended up divorcing.
While she's devastated by the turn of events, it marks a turning point for the now single mother. And Malinda becomes more motivated than ever to get a grip on the mysterious illness.
I finally decided that I had to help myself. I accepted the pain as part of me being me. When you have something for so long, you adapt. And it really isn't abnormal anymore.
Slowly, she finds herself getting back into a routine at home. And after years of bad news, she finally has an unexpected reason to celebrate when she meets Steven Sargestano.
I was attracted to her right away. I noticed she had a really nice smile. She was somewhat of a pistol, had a real vibrant personality. She would talk about having attacks, and I didn't know if she was just embellishing a little bit until I actually saw it.
With Stephen backing me and letting me know it's okay, I found another part of me that had been missing.
Stephen soon becomes Malinda's lifeline, and a year later, they get married. Almost immediately, they decide to move with the children to Pennsylvania. It's a fresh start for everyone. Stephen finds work in the construction business, and Malinda lands a job at a local real estate firm.
I was enjoying what I was doing. And I guess I was living life in a way that I hadn't before.
Then, almost overnight, a disturbing new symptom threatens to send the entire family into a tailspin.
I would have major outbursts of pure meanness.
All of a sudden, I had what probably the kids called psycho mom on my hands.
She was the most angry person I had ever met. Any little thing would set my mom off.
I'd run across a picture or something, and it's like, I'm not worth this. I would tear it up. It was kind of like a volcano getting ready to erupt. All the pressure there. And it would feel so good to let it out.
She would just bite my head off for no reason. I'd wake up, I'd make the coffee, I'd bring her a cup, and then she would immediately start yelling at me about I didn't need to be woke up this morning, or I did something wrong. And I'd be there saying, I didn't do anything wrong. What did I do?
I don't think that man heard I love you for 2 years straight.
I lost sight of not only who I was married to, I lost sight of where I was going. I was just very unhappy. And I probably had one foot out the door.
I went and stayed with friends because I was afraid it would get physical. She had a habit of throwing things, and I didn't want to be in that path.
My husband would always try to make sure that I didn't see my children. He wanted to protect them from me.
For 2 years, the family lives with her outbursts. But finally, it's Malinda who can't take it anymore. Convinced there is only one solution, she makes a desperate choice.
I decided I would rather die than live like this.
For more than 12 years, a mysterious illness has slowly drained Malinda Sargestano of any desire to live. And when doctor after doctor dismisses her symptoms, she feels there is only one option left.
I got in my truck. I drove up the road to this beautiful big high school we have. And I punched that truck with everything it had in it. My intentions were to drive straight through the middle of that school. Nice, big, solid brick building that would kill me. And I was around 80 miles an hour when a car pulled in front of me. I locked up on the truck. And I didn't die that day. I felt like I'm such a nutcase, I can't even commit suicide right.
Malinda sits slumped over the wheel, distraught by how much she has lost and how much more she nearly risked losing. She decides to use her last bit of strength in an effort to rebuild her family.
I had to get my life back, and I had to find a way of dealing with the pain. I had to raise my children. I wanted to be mom again.
Determined to find out once and for all what's causing the crippling headaches, bizarre heart palpitations, incessant perspiration, and uncontrollable fits of rage, Malinda picks up the phone book and makes an appointment with the first family practitioner she comes across, Dr. Mark Sussman.
Malinda came because of a variety of reasons, and she wasn't quite sure exactly what was going on.
He actually sat down and he listened. what my concerns, my worries.
Dr. Sussman gives Malinda a thorough head-to-toe exam and almost immediately realizes that Malinda's blood pressure and heart rate are elevated.
Certainly high blood pressure can cause one to have headaches, but the reality is many patients have high blood pressure and they didn't have the personality changes that she had. So we did a cardiogram to rule out that there was any cardiac disease or heart disease that might predispose her to her rapid heart rate.
But when the findings are in, Dr. Sussman finds himself at a loss for words.
The cardiogram was normal. There was, no abnormalities.
He looked at me dead in my face, and he said, I don't know what it is, but if you hang in there with me, we'll find out.
The only thing he can do at this point is give Malinda a prescription to help control her high blood pressure and encourage her to check back in if anything changes. For Malinda, it's another in a long line of setbacks.
I had to turn within me to find how I'm going to cope with this. I had to mentally depend on me.
It takes everything in her just to get out of bed each day and take care of her family. But over the next 6 months, Malinda's symptoms go from debilitating to life-threatening.
I gave up saying it can't get no worse because I realized it could. I went from 128 pounds, slowly dwindling away, to 92 pounds.
She would go out and buy new pants every so often, but you would tell that they're hanging off of her.
She was getting pale. She was thin. She was deathly thin.
At the age of 40, my mom looked like a woman that was near her 60s. Her hair was very thin. She had skin just hanging off of her bones. It was really frightening.
At that point, I knew I was looking at death.
She had to find out why she was losing weight. She needed to do something to fix the problem.
Stephen insists that she check back in with the only doctor who ever seemed to take Malinda seriously, Dr. Sussman. So she makes an appointment for the following week. But 2 days before she's scheduled to go in, there's a frightening new development.
I went to scratch my stomach, and underneath my ribs I felt this lump. It was a good-sized lump. I knew when I felt it, that wasn't where it was supposed to be, whatever it was. So I called Dr. Sussman.
Dr. Sussman tells her to come in immediately. One look at his patient and he knows Malinda is gravely ill.
Melinda's weight normally is probably like 115, 120. So when you're 90, 95 pounds, you've lost a significant amount of weight. When a physician sees that, and especially in a relatively young person, we're looking to try and get to the specific diagnosis.
Dr. Sussman examines the bizarre protruding lump located under Malinda's left ribs and finds a growth the size of a grapefruit.
It prompted me to, order a CAT scan.
When they done the CT scan, I kept saying, okay, girl, cross your fingers. Even if it's malignant, let them find something. Just let them find something.
When I got the report from radiology, it was like everything came together. I had a suspicion to what the problem might be.
For more than 16 years, Malinda Sargestano has been living with a bizarre set of symptoms that no doctor has been able to diagnose. But when a CAT scan reveals an abnormal growth in her abdomen, Dr. Mark Sussman believes he may have an answer. In order to confirm his hunch, he needs to run a highly specialized urine test.
And we ran to check her hormone levels. I was mainly interested in her catecholamines.
Catecholamines play an important role in the body's physiological response to stress. The most abundant catecholamine is the hormone called adrenaline. So, if her catecholamine levels are high, she will most likely have an elevated amount of adrenaline in her urine as well.
She collects the urine over a 24-hour period. It's sent to the laboratory, and they assess whether or not these catecholamine hormones are present.
The wait is almost unbearable, but when the findings come in, Dr. Sussman knows he's cracked the case.
I can't recall any other patient where I have seen levels as high as hers. So I knew that Malinda had a pheochromocytoma.
A pheochromocytoma is a tumor located on one of the adrenal glands, which sit on top of both kidneys. In healthy individuals, the adrenal glands produce adrenaline to help maintain blood pressure and cope with stressful situations. But in patients like Malinda, a tumor develops on one of the glands, causing an overproduction of adrenaline.
Malinda's symptoms, when one puts it all together, she had frequent headaches, rage, frequently perspired. She had a loss of weight, high blood pressure, fast heart rate. These were adrenaline-like symptoms, and Malinda was getting this because she had a tumor that continuously produced these hormones.
I am not nuts. There's something wrong with me. Everything that I had went through for 16 years was because of one tumor.
But while she's incredibly thankful to finally have a diagnosis, Malinda isn't quite ready to forgive the doctors who repeatedly dismissed her.
Sometimes when I think back about this 16 years, if one doctor would have traded in, quit stressing, for a CT scan, my life would have had a whole lot more joy in it.
Because the adrenal gland is hidden, it's not anything that will cause any mechanical obstruction or obvious symptoms. Frequently, it is not easily diagnosed. This is the only case of pheochromocytoma that I have seen in my 38 years of practice. It is such a rare situation that many pheochromocytomas aren't diagnosed till autopsy.
One thing is clear. Malinda is extremely lucky that her condition was diagnosed when it was.
If a patient does not have surgery and they have an active pheochromocytoma, they usually develop really uncontrolled blood pressure. This eventually would have led to Malinda's death.
But the surgical procedure to remove the growth is also very risky.
When it come time for surgery, I was scared to death, not because of the surgery. I didn't care if I lived. I only wanted to live if I could be me.
Malinda's entire family gathers at the hospital, and as she's wheeled into the operating room, they begin a seemingly endless wait.
I couldn't concentrate, I couldn't focus. I just sat there and I prayed.
With each passing hour, their anxiety seems to build. Finally, 8 hours after the operation began, the surgeon emerges from the OR with the news they've all been praying for. The tumor has been successfully removed, and Malinda is in stable condition.
I was much relieved. I knew that it was an uphill ride from there.
When I woke up and I realized that headache was gone, it was like breathing fresh air for the first time. I was reborn.
After more than a decade and a half of frustration and suffering, Malinda finally has her life back.
Malinda is cured after the surgery. All her symptoms that she had previously disappeared. It's almost like flipping a switch. It's one of the most rewarding things one can have in medical practice, be able to find a specific reason for someone's illness and to be able to cure it.
Today, more than 5 years after the surgery, Malinda is the mother and wife she always wanted to be.
I wished I could say I was me. I'm a better me. I laugh, I cry, I play, I live. I can play t-ball and baseball with my grandson.
We have spent more time doing things together. I am very happy that the vibrant pistol that I love so much is there, and the raging maniac is no longer there.
It's your life. Be your own advocate. You know your body better than anybody. And if the doctor isn't giving you the answers or asking the questions you think he should, if it takes 100, keep going. You'll find your doctor's assessment.
While Malinda Sargestano's harrowing symptoms slowly emerged over the course of 16 years, Craig Leppert's illness was as sudden as it was unexplainable. From the moment New Jersey natives Tracy and Mike Leppert decided to get married, they knew they wanted to be parents. And just 2 years after tying the knot, the young couple gets the news they have been waiting for.
We found out that we were pregnant, and we were so ecstatic. We were so excited.
Then, on September 28, 1990, Tracy goes into labor, and within 10 hours gives birth to a seemingly healthy son they name Craig.
When Craig was born, he was fine, 10 toes, 10 fingers, healthy boy. I was so excited to be a mother for the first time, also scared being a young mother.
I always felt like I was nervous and maybe overprotective of what was going on with him.
But Tracy and Mike quickly adapt to parenthood and find immense pleasure in watching the newborn discover the world.
Craig was always a great baby. He seemed to always have a good time and laugh.
I was a stay-at-home mom, so to pass the time, we would go over to the community pool. Craig always had fun in the water, loved splashing around and just, putting his feet in, splashing away.
But when Craig is 18 months old, one of those fun and seemingly ordinary afternoons at the pool suddenly turns into Tracy's worst nightmare.
We were there probably for about 25 minutes, and out of the blue, he just started to cry. I was just shocked. I did not know where the crying was coming from. I rushed Craig out of the water and checked him over. I was looking for cuts, bruises, scrapes, anything that I could see that I did not see happen in front of me. I did not find anything. After we got back to the apartment, I took everything off of him. I said, maybe it is a sunburn, and let me get a wet washcloth with some cool water and wipe him down. He still continued to scream, and I started to panic. I have never heard this type of screaming coming out of my son ever.
Tracy quickly prepares a cool bath for Craig, hoping the water will soothe the sunburn and relax him. But it only seems to make things worse.
To hear that type of scream, like your mind just starts rambling, what is happening to my child? You want to help them and make them feel better, but what I'm doing is not helping them. You start to get petrified.
Frantic, the new mother calls Craig's pediatrician and gives him a detailed account of the events at the pool. But the doctor doesn't seem too concerned.
The pediatrician told me, even though if he doesn't seem better, if this is out of the ordinary, I would like to see him the next day.
When I got home from work that night, Craig was extremely unpleasant. He was crying for, it seemed like hours. He just was so uncomfortable. I mean, it was in his face. You could just see it that this was your kid that just isn't supposed to act like this.
The ear-splitting screams are almost unbearable, and Tracy and Mike are beside themselves, wondering if they can even wait till morning to take him in to see the doctor. Then, just as it seems they've reached their wits' end, Craig settles down.
At some point, he had calmed down and gone to sleep. So I thought everything would be fine.
But as the young parents discover the next morning, their child is far from fine.
You look down at him, and there is his arms, swollen like tree trunks with all these spots on them. Mike and I looked at each other and said, there's something wrong here.
Tracy and Mike Leppert have just witnessed something they never thought possible. Literally overnight, their 18-month-old son's tiny arms have tripled in size.
So we wrapped Craig up, bundled him up, and put him in the car and rushed over to the pediatric doctor.
The worried parents are both hoping for a simple answer to the severe swelling and crying fits. And after performing a complete exam, the doctor is confident he knows what's behind it.
The doctor found nothing out of the ordinary. He told me Craig probably had a reaction to the high levels of chlorine in the pool.
He prescribes an antihistamine to help bring down the swelling and assures Tracy that Craig will be just fine. In fact, he can return to the pool in 3 days, once the chlorine levels have stabilized.
As soon as we heard from the doctor that he felt it was the chlorine, it was a sigh of relief that there was nothing more that we really need to worry about.
That day, after a few hours, the swelling did seem to go down due to the medicine, and Craig was being back to his normal self. I thought at that point everything was going to be okay.
But a few weeks later, when Tracy decides it's finally safe to bring Craig back to the pool, the screaming and swelling start all over again.
We didn't know what the heck was going on, and we couldn't figure it out. He's got to be allergic to something, so what else could he be doing?
Tracy takes Craig back to the doctor, but she's frustrated by the level of care.
The doctor gave Craig the normal examination like he would do with any other child. Never took any allergy tests or any skin tests. I was getting very concerned that the doctor could not figure out what was going wrong. I knew Craig was suffering, and I'm his mom, and I'm supposed to help him and protect him, and I felt like I was not doing my job.
Convinced the doctor isn't doing all he can to help their son, Tracy and Mike take matters into their own hands.
We didn't know at this point if there was possible germs or any infectious diseases in the pool, that maybe that's what was happening to him. We bought our own kiddie pool, filled it up with our own water, and put it on the side of the apartment. We didn't know if this was going to be the answer, but we knew we could have more things in our control, and we hopefully could stop some of what was happening.
At first, the toddler seems to be having fun splashing around in the water. But just as the parents begin to relax, Craig once again erupts.
Almost like clockwork again, after 25 minutes or so in the kiddie pool, he started to cry. I picked him up, brought him inside, and that's when he started to scratch his skin, like he wanted to rip his skin off.
He was in such pain and such discomfort. It was extremely difficult for both of us to go through it, just to watch it, especially as such young parents as we were.
Tracy quickly tracks down another pediatrician and rushes Craig over to his office. This doctor gives the anxious mother a new diagnosis.
This doctor thought it was maybe an additive in the laundry detergent that was causing Craig to have an allergic reaction. The doctor recommended to try to find a sensitive skin laundry detergent, even though I was already using a baby detergent. Again, I'm not the doctor, I'm the mom, and you do what the doctor says, and so I went out and bought a different detergent. Mike and I were both hoping that maybe this is our saving grace.
As summer turns into autumn, Tracy experiments with various detergents and eventually finds one that seems to do the trick.
We thought we figured out what it was. It looks like Craig's happy. Everything was fine. He was running around like a normal kid, sleeping through the night. Life was good.
Then, in January 1993, Mike gets a new job that requires a move to Albany, New York. It's an exciting time for the young family.
Craig adjusted really well to moving to Albany with the cold weathers and playing in the snow, and he was just having a ball.
Shortly after moving to New York, the couple gets more happy news when Tracy discovers she's pregnant again. The next 9 months seem to fly by, and on July 19, 1994, Tracy gives birth to a little girl they name Nicole.
It was pretty exciting because we always wanted to have this second one, and obviously we wanted to have a girl at this point.
The Leopards are grateful to have what seems like two healthy children, but they miss their extended families. So in July of 1995, they decide to move back home.
I had an opportunity to accept a promotion and a transfer back to the great state of New Jersey, and I took it. It was great. I had a great job. I had a house, 2 great kids, a beautiful wife. I couldn't ask for anything more.
But just a month after moving into their new house, their seemingly perfect life turns into an all-too-familiar nightmare.
Craig was outside with his friends playing in the front yard. Everything was fine. All of a sudden, he just came running through the front door, just screaming at the top of his lungs. His screaming was so intense and so loud, like we've never heard in our entire lives.
It's an attack that Craig will never forget.
One thing that I do remember is the feeling of not knowing, even as a little kid. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I just knew I was in a lot of pain. I just didn't understand what had happened to my body.
Craig was complaining that his arms and limbs and face were on fire. We thought maybe it was a possible sunburn that just did not come out yet, that we could not see. We wiped him down with a wet washcloth to try and cool any body part that might have been affecting him, and nothing seemed to be working. It was getting later in the day that day, so we decided we would call the doctor and make an appointment the first thing the next morning.
Tracy laid in bed with him the entire night, trying to soothe him.
The worried mother hopes that her 5-year-old son will be okay by morning. But come daylight, it's clear that things have gotten much worse.
We woke up the next morning, and that's when I saw his arms and hands were so swollen, they looked like boxing gloves that you couldn't even pinch any skin on his arms or hands. They were purple. I was very scared.
I just remembered that visual of his hands. Just looking at he wasn't crying. He just had it. He had these hands that were just puffed up, and I'm like, what the heck is going on?
Mike and Tracy Leppert are terrified. Their 5-year-old son's hands are so swollen, they look like purple boxing gloves.
I told Tracy, I'm taking him to the doctor. All this stuff about, hey, it could be a reaction, this and that. That's, I got pissed.
We decided to pull out the book and find a local pediatrician that was closest to the house that we can get the fastest to, and that's how we picked Dr. Sargestano.
His fathers brought him to the office with a complaint that he will start screaming like he is in pain, and he breaks out in a skin rash. It is very rare for a parent to bring the child in with this kind of symptomatology.
Dr. Sargestano was definitely taken aback by the swelling in Craig's hands. It was obviously wasn't something that he normally saw in terms of any type of reaction.
I wasn't sure, with the diagnosis yet. It's very frustrating to have a child walking in your office and the parents looking for answers, and you cannot help them.
The only thing Dr. Stavrelis can do is give them a medicated cream to help relieve the bizarre swelling. But he promises that he'll do all he can to help the distraught parents get to the bottom of the case. He just needs some time.
One of the reasons I went into medicine is to find answers to people's problems. I was very intrigued by the severity of the symptoms, and I really wanted to help Craig and his family. I went to the library and searched all the textbooks and the literature to pinpoint exactly what was the condition of Craig.
After spending days trying to put together a list of possible culprits, he finally comes across an extremely rare disease that seems eerily similar to what Craig has been going through.
The symptoms were almost identical. Extreme pain, burning sensation on the skin, and in a few minutes, redness and swelling of the exposed parts of the skin. I called Craig's mother, and I gave her the news that I think I have the answer for her child's condition.
I only found about 4 lines in a medical dictionary, but as soon as I read it, I knew this is what it was. I just started to cry. This is finally the answer to our prayers.
Because Craig's condition was above and beyond my specialty, I advised Craig's father to find a specialist.
The Lepperts quickly locate an expert in their area, dermatologist Dr. Maureen Poe.
To make this particular diagnosis, the best test is a blood test. So we drew some blood and took it straight to the laboratory. We are looking for a molecule that's involved in the biosynthesis of heme, called protoporphyrin.
Heme, an essential chemical in the blood, helps carry oxygen through the body.
If we found that protoporphyrin molecule to be elevated in Craig's blood, we would have a diagnosis.
I was terrified at this point because our son never had a blood test done in his life, and this is a life-altering disease that we might have to deal with for the rest of our lives.
5 days later, the findings come in, and sure enough, they confirm Dr. Stavrelis' initial hunch.
The protoporphyrin was very high. This confirms a diagnosis of erythropoietic protoporphyria.
Erythropoietic protoporphyria, or EPP, is an extremely rare condition in which the body becomes hypersensitive to sunlight. Patients with EPP have a malfunction in the enzyme that converts light-sensitive molecules, called protoporphyrins, into heme. As a result, these molecules overaccumulate within the body, and when they are exposed to sunlight through the skin, toxic photochemical reactions occur.
The best way I can explain my burn is really if you were to take your hand and accidentally put it on a hot stove, and they take that burn and they cut it with a knife. I'd rather break a bone than be burned by the sun.
Family members were reassuring me that it's going to be all right. You know, we'll get through it. It'll be tough, but we'll get through it.
Suddenly, Craig's seemingly random attacks make sense. All those afternoons by the pool triggered the initial episodes, and they only tapered off when the family moved to a cooler climate, where he was less exposed to the sun's intense rays.
We were very happy that we understood what it was that he had. But we were also really scared as to what it meant.
And the family has good reason to be worried. The buildup of protoporphyrin molecules in the body can lead to a life-threatening situation.
The protoporphyrin molecule in the plasma is removed by the liver. The liver then excretes the protoporphyrin into the bile, where it is removed from the body in the bowel movements. This is a toxic process for the liver. A small number of people with protoporphyria will develop liver dysfunction, and this can be progressive to the point of total liver failure.
Making matters worse, there is no recommended cure for EPP. But Dr. Poe assures the Leopards that Craig can lead a relatively normal life if he follows one simple rule.
Treatment for EPP begins with sunlight avoidance.
At this point, I was like, how are we gonna do this? This is gonna be so difficult. How can you not go outside? You can't just tell your kids, get up and go play outside. You just can't do that. It's a life-altering change.
As the family adjusts to their new reality, Tracy and Mike wonder why so many doctors misread Craig's symptoms.
Erythropoietic protoporphyria is a rare disorder. It occurs in about 0.001% of the population. EPP was only described in 1961, so doctors are still learning about it as a diagnosis.
Today, 17-year-old Craig is a senior in high school and an inspiration to all his classmates.
I don't let EPP ruin my life. I mean, it's something very hard to have to live with. But at the same time, I think I do a lot of stuff that a lot of other kids do. And saying that, I mean, I play football, which is something that you're outside every day during practice.
And Craig, a linebacker, has learned that he can practice with his team for about 1 hour at a time, as long as he's covered in 65 SPF titanium oxide suntan lotion and every inch of his skin is shielded.
Before every practice, I have to put on a turtleneck, long stockings, like undergarments, gloves on my hands, and then I have to wear a tinted visor on my face mask to keep the sun from hitting my face.
Craig's relentless determination to be part of the team has inspired the entire community. They raised nearly $150,000 to put up lights on the high school football field so that Craig can play in all of the home games at night.
My family and my friends, and especially the community, have really made me feel like a regular person, and I think that's really important to me.
We put canopies outside. We put a whole theater down in our basement because we like to watch a lot of movies.
If your family's that important to you, then you adapt to what your family is capable or not capable of doing.
You can't live life pissed off, and you can't live life mad, and you can't feel sorry for yourself. And to be able to sit there and not regret anything, well, I think that's the American dream.